We are joined by Wamara Mwine with PoliticsInColor.com, who writes just about that, race and politics, and has tracked the Obama presidency closely. Thanks for being with us, and most importantly, for being with us here in person.
Oh, good morning.
So I'm curious, you said that folks like yourself were given a bit of a heads up that this was coming. But we don't hear the president talk this frankly about this issue as often as some might have hoped for or expected, considering his unique upbringing and his story. What are your impressions of what you heard?
Well, I think first and foremost, you've got the president, stepping up and talking about race and how it affects African-American men who, suffer from, high blood pressure. I mean, 4 out of 10 African-Americans have high blood pressure, and unemployment is at a record high. I mean, 14%. In states like Michigan, it's 18.7%. A lot of people on the national stage don't talk about these things because it's not something that the general public is really interested in getting into. And I think that after years of our history in America with slavery and so forth, that a lot of people feel that many African Americans are stuck in the welfare system and they're not contributing to society. And it's a hard subject to talk about, but I think he really hit on some important points.
What was perhaps the most which line gave you the biggest head nod, perhaps?
I think when he talked about the challenges, in society for African American men, again, some of the things that I just mentioned, but a lot of people don't realize the economic downturn makes it especially difficult for African American men. So you've got a lot of bright minds that graduated there, and I think that what he was trying to suggest to them is just keep striving, keep pushing, because there's opportunities, except you have to go an extra mile to reach those points.
We're talking to Wamara Mwine, who's with PoliticsInColor.com, a veteran White House and political reporter here in Washington who's tracked issues of race and politics and the rise of Barack Obama over the years. He was talking there at one point about the talented 10th. Some people may be familiar with that concept, but remind those that aren't what that is.
Well, you've got, a small percentage of people at the top who really can African Americans that can reach, their goals. And I think that that's something that he's trying to encourage people to really reach and get to the point where they're, able to make an impact on society.
His set of remarks came 2 days after Mrs. Obama, the First Lady, gave an address at Bowie State University in Maryland. I guess I don't know if we still have that clip of the First Lady. She gave a pretty direct set of remarks as well, sort of suggesting that kids these days need to be, told that an education is more valuable than video games, more valuable than becoming a rapper, as he put it, or a baller. I think those were her exact words. You were suggesting that we might actually start to hear more of this from her in the coming years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I did a 5-part series on Michelle Obama for the National Examiner, and I think that she's a very dynamic and very intellectual person, and she's sort of stuck in this role as First Lady, and there's limitations to that. But at Bowie, she was able to address some of these hot-button issues. And one of the stories that I did about her was about the childhood obesity and how she's, created, this fitness program that is, focused on this. So you have a lot of African Americans that are way overweight, and they're dying fast because of this. And she's focused on nutrition and eating well. And, there's another African-American, Ian Smith. A lot of people don't know Dr. Ian Smith, but he has a 500 million pound challenge, and he's got people all over the country losing weight, eating better, stopping as much of the sugar intake, which is related to sodas. I mean, he's really been a trailblazer in this area. So, again, it's important. She's trying to get these students to focus on their contribution to society, not just to go out and have fun and play video games. And, everybody likes going out and having a good time, but she's trying to make them focus on how they could contribute to society.
Let's take a listen to some of what she had to say.
When it comes to getting an education, too many of our young people just can't be bothered. Today, Instead of walking miles every day to school, they're sitting on couches for hours, playing video games, watching TV. Instead of dreaming of being a teacher or a lawyer or a business leader, they're fantasizing about being a baller or a rapper. Right now, 1 in 3 African American students are dropping out of high school. Only 1 in 5 African Americans between the ages of 25 and 29 has gotten a college degree. 1 in 5. But let's be very clear, today, getting an education is as important, if not more important, than it was back when this university was founded.
That was Michelle Obama at Bowie State in Maryland on Friday. And she we should point out, actually, Bowie State opened just 2 years ago, or 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, and was founded not just to educate African Americans, but to teach them how to educate others, as she pointed out during her remarks. Bowie State, just south of Baltimore, between here and Baltimore. In your conversations with folks, Wamara, do you find that people are surprised that the first couple doesn't talk about this more often? Or was there sort of an expectation that they'd get through the first term, get reelected, and maybe take advantage of that and speak a little more frankly about these issues?
Well, one of the things that struck me about Obama, first and foremost, is that, he's half Kenyan and half white Irish American. And, society has this 1% rule. They say, well, one drop of blood makes you black, what have you. But Kenyans, like my uncle who's Luya, he's in Atlanta and has 4 kids. One of them goes to Wake Forest. Were never associated with the slave trade. So Kenyans were never transported here. So I think Americans have this illusion that, Obama's African-American and he plays basketball and all this stuff. But in actuality, there's no direct connection. And, Michelle Obama, of course, is the real deal. I mean, she's 100% African-American. But I think that the other thing is you've got folks out there who don't want to touch these hot button issues. And Obama's, I think, have taken a step back because as a president outside of JFK, he's received more threats, than anybody. I remember covering Skip Gates' story. Skip Gates, a Harvard professor who was arrested in his own home in Boston. And, the flack that I got, the feedback that I got, the threats I received just for even talking about this, it just demonstrates that there are people, and usually these are folks on the far right extreme. Some of these Tea Party people also sometimes come out and say things that make you wonder, what they're thinking. When they said one of these Republicans from South Carolina, Rusty DePass, said a gorilla escaped from the zoo, and he said that gorilla was related to Michelle Obama. I mean, that's just outrageous, but this stuff is out there and it saturates the web, and there's YouTube and everything else, Twitter. I mean, people are using these as vehicles to sort of push this kind of agenda, and it's wrong.
His discussion about fatherhood and about being a good husband seemed especially poignant, considering the audience in that Morehouse is an all-male school. The only other is that a topic that gets discussed as broadly as he attempted here to do, or is this something that people agree perhaps should be discussed more often? It
should be discussed more often in the African-American community. Remember, too, you've got these unemployment rates. I mean, some of us were fortunate. My dad went to Dartmouth and Harvard, and he had, 4 kids, and, we all went not just to college, but also to private school. Mm-hmm. I think, overall expense just for our college was $300,000 or something like that. So obviously he was doing well at the World Bank, was able to afford it. But some people can't afford it. I just met a girl yesterday who had to drop out of Hampton because she couldn't afford her tuition. They took away a scholarship. So she has to come home and regroup and figure out where she's going to finish her last year and a half of school. Very bright, young African-American girl. So, yeah, there need to be more role models, I think, out there that are going to, and there are people like Dr. Boyce Watkins, people like that who I believe are trying to address these family issues, but don't necessarily get as much of a platform. I mean, he has a website, but they don't get as much of a platform to really put their ideas and their social technology out there.
Yeah. Of course, with the presidential bully pulpit is an unrivaled platform. So clearly, to see him discussing it is what brings so much attention to this. And again, this is something that's been talked about since he was a candidate. That here was a guy who is half black and half white. He, as he points out, but is the nation's first black president. And many believed that he would talk about this more often. He doesn't as often, but he did here in a pretty big way, as did his wife over the weekend. And we'll see if they talk about it more. Talk to us a little bit about politicsincolor.com. What exactly do you guys cover?
Well, it's 21 to 57 African-American, Asian, Latino readers. And we came out in, I guess, 2008. I started writing for Politics in Color. And then covered the campaign. And then in 2009, January, when Obama became president, I was credentialed as the White House correspondent. So we made history there. These kind of publications. There's also Atlanta Black Star, which is now coming out and is covering the White House with some regularity. They're helpful. The major newspapers are fine. I mean, the Washington Post, I have a lot of respect for people like Kevin Merida, as I mentioned. I think that, they have people like him have their work cut out for them. But I think that these smaller publications give you a different splash on what's going on the political landscape. I mean, the stories that I published, and I've completed a book. It's probably going to be out later this year, called The Obama White House, a Press Corps Memoir. And it's a compilation of my writing, and it covers things like race and how the Obamas were perceived and how they felt coming in as a young, new administration, obviously the first African-American president, those kind of things.
Well, Wamara Mwine, who is a White House correspondent, political writer for politicsincolor.com, has been in town for a while. Great to have you in. We'll have to have you back when the book comes out.
Thank you.
If not before then. But thanks for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.